Jami Advanced Ayurveda, 124 years of Ayurvedic expertise at the click of a button. www.jami.in, phone number 90430207647, 7824822522.
This is the first event, and it's indeed a great honor to me to be part of this initiative. I wish you all the best for the organizer. And I'd like to thank Mr. S.G. Surya for connecting me and giving me this opportunity, and also the other organizers. And it is also indeed a great pleasure and privilege for me to share my thoughts and expertise to Chennai audience. Thank you very much for once again for giving me this opportunity to share my views on this the topic of the day. I would also like to, I feel honored to be part of a distinguished panel, starting from Commodore R. Vasan. So I know him during my MA days, but I don't know whether he recognized me. And Mr. Shyam Shekhar, a distinguished economist and chief editor and founder, I thought. And it's indeed a great privilege and honor to be part of this the eminent panel to share my views. I have just prepared a few very brief presentation. Then I would like to just give a broader perspective about the topic, the Ukraine crisis and India's option. From then we will have a discussion. Is my screen visible to all of you? Yeah, so let me start with this Ukrainian crisis. The Russia invaded on 24th February. It is almost 18 days, and there is no point of the crisis going to end or the war is going to end. In fact, the great Mahabharata ended in 18 days, but this war has started in a very stunning invasion by Russian, and we were all taken aback or not prepared for such a crisis. So I called this as a crisis because it is a crisis for the rest of the world, particularly it also a crisis for the India as well. So what happens 18 days, the first when the Russia invaded Ukraine, and this is the current position that where Russia is now in Ukraine, and the war, the fight has been intensified. They are in different cities like Kyiv, Kharkiv, Odisha and Kherson. Mariupol has almost been taken over by Russia. And I don't think so, as an expert, I don't think so this war will be over in a short span of time, and I think it will continue, and I'm afraid that it should not have a spillover effect into rest of the other part of the Europe, and that would invite the NATO's response to Russia's expansionist or Russia's military adventure. So I'm not going to go into detail about why Russia has invaded Ukraine, what Russia wanted to achieve, and whom should be blamed, whether Russia to be blamed or Ukraine to be blamed, whether this, what the role of this NATO or who has done this, created this mess, whether NATO has created the mess or Europeans or have created the mess. So these things have already been discussed and broadly in the public domain, including in even most of the TV channels and debates. What I am going to today is just make a present about at present this is the situation and what is going to happen in the coming days and how we should be prepared for that. So I have clustered this the impact of the ongoing Russian-Ukraine war and in three domains. One is what is the political impact of this Ukraine war. The second is the economic impact. Political impact means that it's international political impact. Economic impact, it's a global economic impact. Then environmental impact. That we will discuss in the due course of my presentation. As far as this political impact is concerned, this is nobody had expected, particularly the international community or even the Western countries. Nobody had expected that Russia would give us such a surprise of attacking Ukraine and starting a full-fledged conventional war. We are witnessing a conventional war almost after World War II. it's almost, it's sort of 80 years ago we witnessed the World War II. That is the actual conventional war. A sovereign state is mobilizing its army and attacking its neighbor, and in terms of occupying or annexing that particular country. So this is the first time we are witnessing that, and we are first time witnessing this is happening in Europe. So which means there is we can say that in the written of history. So now the question is that is it a World War III? Can we define this as a beginning of World War III? I think yesterday Joe Biden has hinted that if Russia doesn't stop in attacking Ukraine and continue this war and use any biological, chemical or nuclear weapons, or even threatening to use any biological or chemical or nuclear weapons, because there are allegations that Russia is using chemical weapons in order to expedite its the force mobility, and Russia also denied that. So in that scenario, it is a sort of a hint that the Biden is prepared for World War III, even if it is going to be a nuclear apocalypse or nuclear catastrophe war. So, but whether the Western country will initiate the war, I don't think so. They will initiate the war, because it seems there are a lot of allegations against the Western countries as well, that why NATO has not protected or prevent Ukraine, why the Western countries did not send troops to Ukraine to stop Russians. So these are all things coming up. But as far as the Western countries are concerned, they are waiting to build up their case so that they can they can involve or intervene in an appropriate time with the full domestic support, public support. That would help them to justify their retaliation against Russia. This is what my analysis. So what it looks like? It looks like, based on the voting pattern in the United Nations Security Council, or even the Geneva Human Rights Council, or even the unilateral sanctions levied against Russia in order to weaken its willpower to continue this war. All it suggests that the world seems to be divided into two big camps. One is a democracy camp with authoritarian camp. Some of the countries, like including that, we abstain from voting in favor of or against any of these motions, because that I will justify that why we have abstained, because we don't have any options for us, because we don't have any stake in geopolitical stake or strategic stake in Ukraine or Russian conflict. However, we do have a stake in terms of our dependence with Ukraine and as well as Russia, both in terms of the military hardware collaborations and cooperations, and even import large volume of armaments from Ukraine as well as from Russia, strategic weapons, and that has been continuing for the last 40-50 years. So in such a scenario, and of course the education is also one of the things, we have seen that the 18,000 students, Indian students, stranded there, caught in the war, and how we could able to get them out. The third point, what I'm seeing is that there is a geopolitical realignment is happening, and the situation is very dynamic, and as it is always be, that it's a very dynamic, and we cannot make any sense that which side is moving towards which side and who is going to act or react, which is quite unpredictable. Even we don't know whether the US will react, or even if it reacts, then when it will react and how it will react. It is quite completely chaotic, the crisis there in Europe. Now coming back to the India's options and strategies. This is my reading, because my PhD is also NATO and NATO expansion from post-Cold War period. I submitted in 2011, and I've been to NATO headquarters and interacted with European scholars. And those days, they used to ignore this topic. Particularly the Germans and the French guys, they used to ignore. NATO has, it's not, Russia is not a threat, and we don't see NATO has any relevance to deal with Russia or Russia's threat. We have a good communications and all. But now it seems that the reality is come back and to haunt them. As far as India's options are concerned, as of now, our options, like we have been since independence, when it comes to global politics, we are like a sort of, in a dilemma, which camp to go. So the non-alignment, we created this non-alignment policy so that we will not be part of any of this camp during the Cold War. But now the thing is not like that, because we are very decisive to make a stand and articulate a stand, and our position is being conveyed to the international community as well. Earlier, what happens that we used to be very cautious about that the Americans should not think bad about if we go against Americans' plan or Americans' wish. That was reflected in when we voted in favor of Iran, when US brought a resolution against Iran in 2004. So that is a big we were in a fix that, and Manmohan Singh government that time chose to favor the US resolution. And the next time we wanted to appease the Iranians, so we voted we wanted to appease the Americans, so we voted against Iran in support of the Western countries, because the Indo-US nuclear deal, all things were there. So our situation is like, it's like a cat on the wall. Sometimes we go that side, so in order to appease everyone. But now today, this is not the situation. The world, the entire international community is keenly observing us, and it is those countries, particularly Russia, Ukraine, or the US, or the Western countries, they are putting pressure on India to take a stand. And that itself shows that, our status in the international politics now. Now coming back to the strategies, what will be our strategies? As of now, our strategy seems to be that consolidating the regional our regional presence in South Asia, because there is a possibility that there is a spillover effect of this war if it continues for a long time in the other regions, and India seems to be particularly under the Prime Minister Modi ji's dynamic leadership. We are preparing for a scenario that if spill over into South Asia region, and the China if gets emboldened and sort of try to provoke us, and given the China-Pakistan nexus, and we seems to be in a high alert and preparing for such scenarios. This morning, the Prime Minister has convened a high-level meet, and this is a third meeting, I guess. And today's meet particularly looking at the security implications of this war. What if continues, and what if it turns to be a World War III, and what should be India's strategies to deal with them. So that means that we are alert, and we are very much prepared to focus on that. And we can also, last in the 2 weeks, I've been observing that how the Prime Minister has been insisting on that this war had shown us that we have to be self-reliant. And the self-reliance in defense, it was in fact mooted in 2 years back, and the Prime Minister has mentioned this Atmanirbhar Bharat. So when Atmanirbhar Bharat and the foreign direct investment in 100% investment defense sectors, particularly defense procurement and manufacturing, the people used to mock at the thing that the government is allowing the private investors to invest in the defense sector, which is very sensitive, and also a lot of criticism that when the ordnance factories were dissolved and made it to a public sector units. So these are criticism. But now if you see, now in the crisis, and this turned out to be a sort of a foresightedness or the visions that are premonitions that Prime Minister Modi ji had, that we need to be self-reliant. Now you see, last 3 years we have got 2 defense corridors. One is in the south, you can see in Bengaluru and Hosur, the area, and one we had it in Lucknow in the northern defense corridor. The idea of this defense corridor is to get these investments by the foreign investments to manufacture in India. Again, this Make in India project. So now what will happen in the political scenario if the countries are moving towards a war? Everybody try to isolate themselves or become, isolate themselves and become self-reliant. So they won't be available, weapons won't be available in the market. You have to be reliant on yourself. You can't be dependent on that. So this initiative has already been taken 3 years back. I think down the line, we already have a strong collaborations with private companies like Kalyani Group and even Mahindra, Tata, and all these companies have started collaborating with the foreign companies, including the aerospace engineering and in manufacturing the aircrafts. So as of the political impact and this thing and the global political dynamics is changing, seems to be well placed and well steering the things. And that is what even in Asia, if you look at the last 18 days, the Chinese presence, just like a comparative perspective, the Chinese, although they have a very strong influence with the Russia, and Russia seems to be a client of China, but in the Western countries, the China has failed to manage. Now it is picking up. After looking at India, how it is behaving with the Western countries, balancing the Western countries, and then Chinese started, talking to Americans and expressing their concerns that, we do have a strong relationship with Russia. Now, moving back to the economic impact, and this is a very serious impact, because this economic impact will be felt by a common man. So again, we prepared? I think we are prepared. But let me put a list that how it is going to affect the global economic impact. We have been expecting, there were also a lot of social media buzz with all sort of memes and jokes. Even some of the media that, wait till 10th March and after that the Prime Minister is going to increase these fuel rates and fuel prices. But it has been almost 3 days. I don't think so the fuel prices has gone up. And one more thing that, in fact, the Russia has offered a very cheap fuel for us to buy from Russia. So there is also opportunity. There is a threat also that this will impact the fuel, the fuel rates or the oil crisis. And also opportunities that, the Russian, the reserve can be diverted to India. Again, I would like to highlight this particular point. In 2018, under the BRICS summit, it happened in Goa. BRICS is like a Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. It is a regional groups. We signed an MOU tripartite agreement with Russia, China and India. None of the media had highlighted, but most of the experts, they have studied this in depth. Under this agreement, India imports the oil and gas from Russia through China via Myanmar. So this agreement is done in 2018. But what happened in the previous, I'm just giving a perspective that in the previous, we have been last 20 years there, the government has been since 2004 starting this TAPI, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline, or Iran, Pakistan, India pipeline. It is still in the process, but we haven't got any considerable developed progress in that effort. But one meeting, in tripartite meeting in BRICS in 2018, we got a deal, and Russia and China has agreed to supply those gas via Myanmar. And from Myanmar, because the Chinese have a good pipeline from Russia to China, Xinjiang province, Khotan, and then from Khotan to Myanmar, up to Myanmar, the Chinese have constructed the gas, the pipelines, and we just need to get it from our tracks from Myanmar to Indian side. So it's very simple. So as of now, the fuel crisis is concerned, I think it is quite manageable, and the government is very confident they would manage it. Financial instability, and this Prime Minister has hinted, and even the World Bank has also highlighted 2 days back, that they are going to reverse the predictions which they have made about this post-pandemic, the financial, the health of the global financial health. And in that respect, I think we are well placed in terms of forex and as well as the reserves, and also the GDP growth in the post-pandemic scenario. The energy crisis, as I said, that it is quite under control and quite manageable, since we have also sort of diversifying the energy. And one important aspect is that the International Alliance, the International Solar Alliance, it is India's initiative, global initiative. This was initiated by the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, and now it has been in a full swing. And we have, if you look at the compare last 3 years or 3 years, and how many solar parks has been created in India. So as of now, the renewable energy sources is going to help us in meet out our any sort of crisis which happens in that. An impact on India's economy and responses, I think the government is very well placed, and it is the steps which he has taken 3 years back, it is going to help us, and it is going to protect us and save us. And that is what the credit goes to the government, since they have had this foresightedness, because they never anticipated the war is going to happen. But in the pandemic, even the pandemic would come, but it seems to be in the right direction. One is this Atmanirbhar Bharat and the Make in India, and the series of initiatives that we have taken to meet out energy crisis, and that flows from the idea of the self-reliance. The Swadeshi concept of Swadeshi, that we need to strengthen our how our needs whatever the most of the needs has to be met by the local production and local resources as well. Environmental impact, and this is the area that I think we need to have we need to prepare ourselves to see in case if there is a full-fledged war, or if the war stretches for a long time, and I'm sure that the Europeans will be pulled in. Why I'm saying is that it is not my just a mere superficial analysis. It is based on the data which I get. This is the first time that the Europeans have mobilized the military since World War II, allocated the resources, doubled the expenditures for the defense, and what do you call them, and amplified the defense productions. And even the Sweden, after 270 years, they have broke that neutrality stand and overtly supporting the Ukrainian crisis. And that all shows that the West seems to have been prepared to take the Russian threat, and they don't take Russian threat lightly. But Russia, if it is getting isolated, even the China will not be with Russia. Given the Chinese, the trade interdependence and the investments in the European and as well as the US in the Western countries. As of now, the Chinese, that is how that initial beginning, they were just waiting and watching, but and in the few days after the war, but we stepped in and started communicating with both the leaders, and even talking to both the leaders frequently, and that made our presence felt that we are an inevitable or unavoidable player in the global politics to establish peace and stability in anywhere in the region. So, as far as the nuclear war, is it possible or not? I don't think so. I cannot rule out there is a nuclear war, but I have a fear that this Ukraine case will lead to a more proliferation of nuclear weapons. And that is a sort of a series of major serious concern. I think the Western countries will nuclearize some of the regions. They may give the nuclear weapons to some of the East European countries. If NATO is not keen to, if there is no unity within the NATO, and the US will share their nuclear weapons to some of the bordering countries, and that will provoke Russia. And I don't know that the future it's going to be very grim. So, and the role of international community to avoid nuclear catastrophe, I think it is very limited, because most of the regulatory agencies are, dominated by the Western influence. This is a sort of a very bleak scenario future. And the question is that whether it will have an impact on India's nuclear program. I think here there is an issue that if you look at that India's defense, like strategic weapons and the tactical weapons, over the last 5 years, what happened is that we have reduced our dependence on Russia's import on the strategic weapons. However, we have increased or diverted our weapons import from Ukraine. For instance, the Navy frigates, I think Commodore Watson would give us more enlighten and this point that the frigates and all, they get a lot of the parts from the Ukraine, and we depend on the Ukraine on this, even the infantry weapon system, tactical weapon system. However, the strategic weapons are concerned, we are slowly reducing our import from Russia. For example, the Rafale, we got it from French. Even some of the helicopters we are shifting towards non-Russian companies to import. So that tells everything that we are slowly reducing our dependence on Russia. Because the Russia is giving the same weapon system to China. For S-400 is a case. The S-400 has been given to China, and we are also going to get. And there's no possibility. There's no way we can stop that if Russia gives the same S-400 to Pakistan, because that's their business. So in nuclear program, we have also under the US nuclear deal 2005, and after that, we have diversified our the fuel for the nuclear programs, the support for the nuclear programs, and we are also trying to indigenize our nuclear reactors and nuclear programs. And the Indo-US nuclear agreement and the energy waiver would help us to sustain our nuclear program. In case of war, we have to amplify our production of nuclear warheads for deterrence purpose, and we reserve our right to the no first use policy. But this government, in the two manifestos, they said we are going to go with this no first use policy, which means India is now shifted their policy that we will go for a first use policy as well, in case there is a credible threat. So, I would like to just sum up saying that India is today as an emerging global power, and these are the signs, and these are the the noticeable factors. One is that India's response to Russian-Ukraine crisis war is a very, very well calculated, measured response, diplomatic response to deal with. We have taken a decision to deal with both the Ukraine as well as the Russian leadership, particularly Zelensky and Putin. And in fact, the Biden, even the United States, started this communication only after the week after the crisis. India is perhaps the first one to initiate the direct talk over telephonic conversation with both the prime ministers on the humanitarian ground that we need to evacuate not only the Indian students and also those civilians who are stranded in the war-torn areas. And there are statement by the Russian President Putin as well. The instruction has gone down to the military level that the Indian evacuation progress should not be stalled. And this is also conveyed to the Ukrainian government as well. So, and that helped us to evacuate our students. So Operation Ganga, it is a sort of a very well calculated strategy to get our students out. And in fact, it is the first India's non-military humanitarian intervention to evacuate 18,000 students studying in Ukraine, from Ukraine. And this is a laudable, commendable effort by the government of India under the Prime Minister's leadership to get our students out. And the way in which we scrambled and started working and with the other neighboring countries like Poland, Slovakia, Romania, and Hungary, that shows our diplomatic prowess or proudness. We have the powerful things. Where we will have a problem is that in India's weapon import, and that's what I highlighted already, that we have been started this indigenous process. Now we need to amplify this, expedite this process to realize this Atmanirbhar Bharat in weapons production. And with the steps have already been taken, the initiative has already been taken, but due to the pandemic, it has slowed down that progress. But I would think that this Ukraine crisis is an eye opener. Now the more companies will come out, will pick up and manufacturing the weapons that require for the Indian Armed Forces. So Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat actually sort of a shield for us in this current crisis, and that put India in a global spot. So I would like to sum up saying that today the India is not the India of 1970s. Many people have participated in the debate. They say that Russia is an old friend. We have to be with them because they are the one who helped us. Of course, that is the situation at that time. But today we have to maneuver in a way to project or promote our interest, national interest. And we are not the country which is our status, which was in 1971. We are well placed, and that's the reason the Western countries have been, persuading us to make a statement against Russia, but we choose not to, since it is a sort of a dynamic and evolving situation. So we sided with the peace and the stability to be restored in any part of the world. Thank you very much, and I look forward hear any questions or any comments.